There is one question that lingers in the minds of driving enthusiasts, and that is whether an EV can deliver the performance and the thrills of a gasoline-powered version. Well, we're going to try and answer that question in this episode. We're looking at the all-new Mercedes-AMG EQE. Buckle up and let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Max, racing driver, lover of driving fast, fun things. And on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, the idea of a performance-minded EV is a relatively new thing. And since this AMG is all new, I'm definitely curious. And before we get into what it's like to drive, let's have a look at this Mercedes-AMG EQE in a little more depth. As you'd expect with an all-new performance-oriented EV from AMG, there's going to be a lot to unpack here. Of course, it starts with two electric motors, one at the front axle, one at the rear, and depending on drive mode and options, there are various power levels. Standard output is 617 horsepower and 701 pounds of torque, or 677 horsepower and 738 pounds of torque if you get the AMG Dynamic Plus package. But get this, output varies by the setting you've selected. Slippery is 50% output, Comfort 80, Sport 90, Sport Plus 100%, which is 617 horsepower. Race Start without the boost function is 100%, which is 617 horsepower or 701 pounds of torque. Race Start with boost is 110% output, which is the 677 horsepower and 738 pounds of torque setting, which is part of that AMG Dynamic Plus package. With motors at each axle, that makes this AMG EQE all-wheel drive, and the system is fully variable and tuned by AMG, so they've designated it 4MATIC Plus. To give you a sense of what it's capable of, torque distribution is not tied to just what the driver wants, but also drive mode, and measures torque 160 times a second. The battery has a usable size of 90.6 kilowatt hours. Max charging is 170 kilowatts. Range is about 225 miles or 362 kilometers. Four-wheel steering is standard. The suspension's based around a 4-link front setup, multi-link at the rear, air springs, adaptive dampers, and it's all tuned by AMG. This one also has the optional massive carbon ceramic brakes, which require the 21-inch wheels you see here. There is an AMG TrackPace MBUX app, which is basically data acquisition. Don't call it telemetry. It captures 80 data points and displays lap times and lap sector times in real time on the heads-up display, instrument cluster, and the infotainment screen if you take your AMG EQE to the track. Because this doesn't make the glorious sounds of the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that we're used to seeing in AMGs, they have bestowed this AMG EQE with the AMG sound experience, which makes various sounds depending on drive mode and driver preference. Finally, and perhaps importantly, curb weight of this Mercedes-AMG EQE is 5,500 pounds. With AMGs, I tend to have high expectations across the board for a lot of reasons, and thankfully, I'm very satisfied with the seating position. The seat's nice and low to the floor. We've got a traditional AMG steering wheel here, and then I've got a great interface to the pedals. And I am perfectly set up here. In terms of visibility, forward is fantastic. The view out that sloping rear window is pretty limited. There's not much to see there. And speaking of which, should they have made this a hatchback given that sloping roofline? Anyway, I digress. Back to what it's like to drive this AMG EQE. Well, it is very much set up for drivers, so the steering wheel kind of dominates the experience, and it is the traditional AMG wheel, so it's an interesting shape. It's a little thick in terms of the rim thickness, and then of course has the flat bottom, which I may not necessarily be a fan of. After that, this seat is a decent mix of bolstering for support and comfort. I'd actually like the seat to be a little bit more aggressive with perhaps a couple more lessons taken from the seats that are in the AMG GTR or something similar. I like those seats that are a little bit more aggressive, and I think they would be suitable here given the amount of performance that this particular AMG EQE is capable of. Like, this is a formidable machine, and you do want a little bit more support here. Lots of space for you and your passenger. I can actually fit comfortably behind myself. I am on the shorter side. Taller people may not want to sit in that second row, but easily 4 average size adults will be very happy in this EQE. There's a decent amount of room in the trunk as well. I can't even fill it with all the bags I'm traveling with right now. And on top of that, the rear seats are split and folding, and they're power split and folding. So if you do things like I do, carry bicycles, snowboards, golf clubs, well, you can drop those seats easily. In terms of infotainment, this is Mercedes' latest. We've seen this before in the EQS and the new S-Class. I do run it on Apple CarPlay. Very happy that way. Apple CarPlay can be run wired or wirelessly, whatever you prefer. Love that option. And the rest of it's fairly easy to live with. Climate controls have moved here now, so you got to keep that into consideration. In some instances, some of those secondary controls that are available through this infotainment screen should be a button or a dial or something. For example, the rear defrost. And I've had to use it. And the thing is, I've got to look here on the screen, take my eyes off the road to switch that on. That should be a button somewhere because you're going to use that a little bit more frequently. And that will allow you to keep your eyes on the road a little bit more. Ergonomically, this is a blend of very modern Mercedes and EV and some AMG being here on the wheel. What I do have to say about this driving experience, yes, it's quiet because it's an EV, but more importantly, this Burmester sound system in this car is just incredible. I absolutely love it just for that. This sound system is fantastic. One thing I haven't delved into is the sort of LED lighting that goes on here, and there's a little bit of a light show in its current mode, and sure, that's kind of cool at night. I would probably switch that off if I were driving this EQE a little bit longer, but it seems to vary with whether you're actually applying the throttle or you're braking or using regenerative braking. It's a bit of a light show here at night. Oh, yeah. This is ridiculous. Yes, this is equipped with the AMG dynamic package, so it makes all the power and all the torque that you could possibly get in an EQE AMG, and it's capable of doing 0 to 60 in apparently 3.2 seconds. That is just ridiculous, and it does it reliably every single time, assuming you've got a decent road surface. This is just incredible in terms of its ability to put down power and move this 5,500-pound AMG. This is incredibly quick. Yeah, it's called the AMG Dynamic Plus package, and that gives you all the powers and all the torques that you could possibly make in this AMG EQE. VMAX, though, is about 150 miles an hour, and that would be interesting. I think there's just enough aero for this to be perfectly stable at 150 miles an hour. The driving experience is really dominated by the way they've tuned these electric motors to put down power. The control they have to do that with electric motors is so much more granular than they can with an internal combustion engine and a mechanical drivetrain. This is a completely different driving experience, and in this performance environment, it's absolutely incredible and incredibly well resolved. Really, there's not much more to say about this AMG EQE's ability to accelerate. It's just flawless, and it just puts down power so well. I do have to give some credit to these Michelin pilots. Not only are they a high-performance tire, but they are an EV-specific application. As you know, EVs tend to weigh a little bit more, and these are an EV-specific Michelin pilot, and they live up to the legend of the Michelin pilot tire. These are just incredible tires. I have found them to be perfectly predictable and completely reliable, and they never, ever complain. This is just ridiculous. It is so quick. I love it. Dynamically, we have an incredibly sophisticated suspension here. There is a lot going on, and of course, between all the drive modes, they are distinct from one another. The damping is very, very clear. One of the things I have to mention is that, of course, the drive modes are selectable here on this dial, whatever they call it in AMG speak, but you can decouple the damping as well as the sound here on this particular model, but you can decouple the damping. So if you go automatically to Sport Plus, instead of using individual settings, go straight to Sport Plus, you can actually put the dampers easily back to comfort mode, which is the smart thing to do given that we are driving on public roads and they are not billiard table smooth. With respect to the steering, well, given that it is four-wheel steering, you always have a little bit of a concern whether they have resolved the rear steer in conjunction with the front and everything works together. In this case, it absolutely does. So you have the best of both worlds. You have that high-speed in-phase rear steer going on. That helps for higher speed stability, and that's above 37 miles an hour. Below 37 miles an hour, what's actually going on is the rears steer out of phase to make this a little bit easier to maneuver. Very helpful in parking situations, but given the form factor of the EQE, this kind of fits anywhere in terms of parking spaces anyway. What I like about this steering is that it is direct and precise. It's well weighted as well, but there's not a lot of feel or feedback that comes through this steering wheel, even at its upper limits. It is direct, precise, and I can stay on top of this EQE AMG, no problem. Whether that's getting into a corner, breaking in late and turning it in, or trying to control maybe a little oversteer attitude, this does it all. Very, very happy with the steering, the way it works. Given that we are talking about an EV with regenerative braking, the braking conversation is a bit more in depth, and especially on this car because we do have the optional carbon ceramics. You've got 3 levels of regenerative braking controlled by the shift paddles here, or they're not shift paddles, are they? They're regenerative braking paddles. I'm in strong recuperation mode, which is kind of like one pedal driving. That's typically where I drive it. And then there's normal recuperation, and then there's no recuperation at all. So there's actually more of a freewheeling kind of feel. This normal feels like a normal internal combustion engine on compression. Braking power is incredible. Feel modulation spot on. I can jump on this pedal, rely on the ABS to do exactly what I want it to do, as well as any other braking inputs. These brakes are resolved perfectly. They're tuned wonderfully. Love the way that this car brakes. Here, I'm going to dive on these brakes. No problem whatsoever. Right now, I'm driving this in normal recuperation, so the regenerative braking isn't interfering with what I'm trying to do in terms of feel and applying the brakes, and it does exactly what I want it to do. I have never overtaxed these carbon ceramics. I think these brakes are just incredible. With respect to the finer details of how this particular EV sedan handles, well, it comes down to the suspension. There is a little bit of a difference. It's a subtle difference between each of the drive modes in terms of damping. And like I mentioned earlier, we tend to run this on comfort mode because we are on public roads. On racetracks, I'd maybe firm this up a little bit, but on public roads, you just want those dampers and the suspension to work a little bit more, which is exactly what they do. On some canyon roads, as I've been enjoying this suspension is incredible, and it's a wonderful platform in order for me to attack those canyon roads with all of the power and all the torque that this EQE AMG makes. The suspension tuning gives me incredible confidence. I'm just prepared that this AMG is not going to let me down in the corners. It absolutely does not. The body and wheel control is excellent, and then that gives me just this wonderful foundation to start playing with this AMG, and this is what this car is all about. It is this cohesive package between how the suspension works, how the brakes work, and then how it can put down power, because this 4MATIC Plus is really the glue that puts all of this together in terms of this car's dynamic package. And I'm just going to attack these corners here. This is just incredible. Does exactly what I want. The way it puts down power exiting corners, incredible. Whether I've got some steering lock or not, it puts down power flawlessly. Look at this. I just have tremendous confidence in this car. This is definitely the finest EV performance car I have driven yet to date. This is incredible. And then when we're cruising on the open road or through the city, ride comfort is not punishing at all. It still is very comfortable, and that is credit due to the sophistication of the suspension. As a performance sedan that is an EV, well, this is a very unique experience. This is just an incredibly well-rounded, well-resolved performance EV sedan. This is a very cool thing. How do you spec yours? Well, this is both a difficult and an easy question to answer. Base price of the Mercedes-AMG EQE in the United States is $106,900. In Canada, it's $121,000. After that, the options list gets fairly deep, so we have to take that into consideration. This particular car is fitted with a long list of options. Some of them are notable, like the flat finished Manufacture graphite gray Magno paint at $3,250. The seats are heated, ventilated, and massaging. Inside, we've got the black sable brown Napa leather at almost $3,000. The carbon ceramic brake package is $5,450 US and requires these 21-inch wheels. These wheels are priced out at $1,400 and come with no-charge summer tires. Two bits of standard equipment I have to point out. One is the Burmester 3D sound system. I absolutely love it in this car. And second are the digital light LED headlamps with projection function. These things are incredible and absolutely deserve a separate episode. Even with just those key considerations, there are many more options available for this EQE AMG. As tested, this is about $130,000 in the US. Other than understanding what the base price of an AMG EQE is in Canada at $121,500, I have no idea what optional prices are. Nonetheless, in terms of speccing yours, well, I think you have to go with the carbon ceramic brakes just for the performance, as well as these wheels and tires. Those are pretty cool. But also, one big consideration for me, don't get this paint. Flat paint is played out, and it's incredibly difficult to keep clean. I have washed this car, I think, twice already while I've been driving it, and it's still dirty. So I'm not a big fan of this flat paint. Otherwise, with your EQE AMG carbon ceramics, these wheels and tires, and some regular paint, I think you'll be just fine. My verdict, here's the thing. I'm happy with any vehicle as long as it paints a smile on my face. After that, I don't really care how it does that. And this Mercedes-AMG EQE absolutely does that. And it does that in an interesting way. Because of these electric motors, they can control the way the torque is distributed. And the suspension is sophisticated, the brakes work so well, and the way this is able to put down power and rocket out of corners, as well as carry speed through corners, all to my satisfaction, absolutely paints a smile on my face. As well, I love the size of this EQE. It absolutely works for me, and I can deal with this quite easily on a day-to-day basis, although I'd probably go to jail with all of this power and all of this torque. But nonetheless, this is a fantastic machine, and I think it absolutely sets a new standard for performance EVs. It's incredibly satisfying to drive, and if you're looking at something like this, definitely get behind the wheel of this AMG. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this all-new 2023 Mercedes-AMG EQE. Hope you liked this episode, and if you did, you're not new to YouTube. You know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this video, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this episode with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Plus, there's some EV merch there as well. Anyway, thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Mercedes-AMG EVs.